This little guy is not forgiving at all. He slaps you in the face and he's like, look at what you've done. Look at this line. It's so ugly. It looks like you. And I'm like, oh my God. Ugh, you stop sneaking up on me like that, huh? Ugh, what in the world? That's another bird. Who did this? Did you do this? Are you reproducing? Oh my God. I can't have any more. Oh my God. What's up, guys? We got a couple new additions to the bird family. Seems like they're really happy in my house and they are reproducing. But they aren't the only new things that I want to talk about today. So as many of you guys know, I do digital art, but I used to do traditional art. And just the other day, I was in the shower, just letting the water run down my face to mask my tears as I think about all my failures as a human being. And suddenly the traditional side of my artist brain was like, dude, you haven't used a pen in like 8 years. So I was like, oh, hell no. And he was like, So as a result of that, I went outside for the first time in like 2 years, no clothes, and I picked up a sketchbook. And this is a little micron pen. It's a 0.25 millimeters. I mean, I've used similar equipment before back when I was doing traditional art when I was younger, but I really haven't touched this stuff in like 8 years. And I was just curious how my skills would translate from digital art to now. So now I've officially entered the Sam Does Traditional Arc. So you guys buckle up. It's going to be a journey, and get your knives and forks while you're at it, because do you smell that in the air? That's my cooking. Now, when I embarked on this journey, just before I went out and got this micron pen, I decided to actually just try it out with a regular blue ballpoint pen. And I mean, the pen worked well, but I didn't. It's basically like drawing without undo, without layers, without liquefy, and also without pressure opacity. But you can definitely see that this is my first time back. There's a lot of rust here, especially like, look at that jawline. I doubled over it like 3 times. I think I was going for some type of stylization here, but it just didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. And there's a more challenging perspective of the face right here. Again, you know, didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. But I feel like when I got down here to this piece, I was a little bit more happy with the way it flowed, with some of the shapes and the simplification here. And then I got my new pen. Now, because the tip of this pen is so thin, it has such a fine tip, I found it a lot easier to kind of control the lines and the amount of information that I was putting down. By the way, if you guys hear dripping sounds, it's the rain outside. Or I could be leaking, but try to think of it as the rain outside. So yeah, one thing that I noticed with some of these pieces is that a lot of them tend to have broken up silhouettes and lines that don't really connect to one another. This is a pretty good example of that. If you take a look at the line here by the neck, it doesn't really connect up here towards the ear. And a very similar thing going on here, right, with the front of the neck. If you come down here, you can see that the top of the head, the silhouette doesn't entirely enclose itself. So if you were to use a paint bucket tool on this sketch, it would go all over the place, like my bowel movements after a taco. Here are some more sketches that I decided to try out with some faces, and here are some more face sketches. Every single time that I jump into one of these, it's a very terrifying experience because I know that there is no way to correct a mistake if I do make a mistake. I did record some of the process for you guys to check out as well, but basically my process of drawing this, since there's no sketch, there's no guidelines, I would try to find a singular anchor point. I would start off from there and I would kind of expand outwards from there. It's almost like as your line moves along, you're finding these shapes. Now, while I'm here, I also want to ask you guys some questions. Okay, so for those of you who are traditional artists who do this all the time, please let me know in the comments what your guys' process is like. Do you guys start off with a sketch, or do you also just go in raw? Pause. So those few pages in that sketchbook were kind of like my first experiments with getting back into this traditional medium. Now, I want to show you guys my new sketchbook. After watching one of Scott's videos where he said to draw everything every day, I found myself approaching this style of drawing a little bit differently. There are no faces here. Well, I mean, there's one face, the face of my enemy. But I mean, otherwise, you know, these are household objects, my backpack, some cameras, just a lot of random stuff, you know, and this is inspired by the philosophy of drawing everything every day. Shout out to Scott. So if we take a closer look here, you can see that the lines are not very great at all. In fact, you know, a lot of these lines just don't even connect to each other. They're kind of wobbly. I found that my hand doesn't really like traveling in a straight line. Maybe that says something about me. Maybe I'm just some of these lines here were just an absolute nightmare. I find one of the hardest things to draw with a pen are perfect circles or perfect straight lines. Now, I find that drawing these random objects can actually help you a lot in terms of getting a grasp of things like perspective, for example, and, you know, things like proportions, how to capture something accurately. It's really a fantastic practice, and that's why a lot of really great artists like to bring a little sketchbook with them everywhere they go, and you can kind of flip back through that sketchbook and look at the dates and kind of remember where you were based on that visual information. I find that kind of neat, so I might start like another smaller sketchbook just to have it with me everywhere I go. But see, there I go again, just starting new projects before I even finish this one. And here are some of my studies for the next day. Now these cars were just parked out on the street. I decided to just look out the window and draw what they looked like. And there's a little can of fizzy drink that I probably shouldn't have drank. And the rest of these, I found these on Pinterest because I don't go outside. I don't see any real life people. So in the previous earlier pages, I did a lot of faces and portraits, but in this one, I wanted to try out some full body drawings, you know, some anatomy. You can see some of these areas where I was a little bit unsure of the lines, so I went over the lines once or twice or maybe 3 times. Even down here in this piece as well, there's a lot of correction going on here to the silhouette. So not everything is all great, but here's the next page. March 13th, I decided to study some household objects and some more studies from Pinterest here, you know, full body studies, portrait. I tend to not flesh out my silhouettes entirely, so there's always these breaks in between the lines. For those of you who are a little bit more experienced in pen and ink drawing, let me know. Is it like really bad, or can I just say that it's stylized? Now moving along, here are some more studies from Pinterest. Just going back to portraiture studies here, there's a closer look at some of them. So this portrait right here has got to be one of my favorites, and I love the way the front of the face came together. I also really like the front side of this face here, just the eyes, the brows, and the minimal use of lines to convey the front side of the nose. Before you applaud me for my successes, it's not all good though, okay? There are still mistakes that I cry about in the shower to this day. So if you come down here to this portrait, I really messed up the angle of that jawline at first, so then I had to stop that line right there and come back up with this line, and that was very traumatic for me. I'm pretty sure I also messed up the ear here. That's why this part is so messy, but it's interesting because when you're drawing with this thing, it just puts all of your mistakes, all of your failures on full display, and you can't hide it. With every mark you're putting down on the page, every gesture that you take towards the next step, it's a process that takes a lot of courage from you, and I feel like I really enjoy that. Moving on, some more faces. So I have been drawing with a pen every single day, and at this point I do feel like I'm starting to get acclimated to this medium. I mean, it's nice to know that these are not complete poo like the first day. A couple of favorites from this page, it's got to be that top one right here and this one in the middle. But yeah, I personally love the flow of this arm, the line here going into the hand. It captures that gesture of the character really well. And now coming down to this one, see right here, I was really proud of the way that I simplified the facial features. Now I did mess up a little bit on the side silhouette of the face, but I feel like the simplicity and the accuracy of the facial features really made up for it. And I think this really goes to show just how little information you need for it to read as a face, right? Like I've just got the top lid. There's just 1, 2, 3, 4 dots for the nose to convey that shape. There's no nose ridge. See, the lips are just made of 1, 2 dots and one singular shape in the middle. Anyway, so with these pieces that I was really happy with, I was just like, man, I'm hooked right now. So I decided to do another page. This is a very challenging perspective, and I did have to make some adjustments to things like the eyes. And then down here, I tried out some poses, some full body poses. You can see that my lines started getting a little bit loose here. They're a lot more gestural. Again, it kind of just indicates a sense of uncertainty with the subject that I'm drawing. So I probably need a little bit more practice here. Obviously, I'm not like an anatomy god or anything. So there are definitely a lot of things that I do not know. And I feel like once I do build up that anatomical knowledge, once I get many more of these drawings under my belt, maybe I can start to simplify my lines a little bit. Maybe these characters will start coming out a little bit cleaner. And then in typical Pinterest fashion, I was sent down a rabbit hole of volleyball poses. You can see a lot of searching lines that I use here. I mean, here on the legs as well, you know, you can just see some lines that are hesitating, some lines that go over the boundaries. It's not perfectly clean. See, these lines repeat so much, it almost looks like movement. But I found this really liberating because it's like these sketches don't have to be perfect. In fact, you know, allowing these imperfections to happen might show you areas where you're less confident. Just happy little accidents. So here are some more volleyball poses. Here's some spiking poses. There's a guy who just caught a ball. I feel like the cleanliness of your lines is going to take a lot of time to build up. It's not one of those things that just requires a really steady wrist, you know, big biceps, big delts, huge guns, but it also requires a huge mental library of information on the human body. I feel like I know the basics, but I'm still a bit of a baby. You know, compared to some of the masters out there who just seem to know every single muscle in the human body, and they seem to find muscles where I didn't even know they existed. It's just wild. But then, you know, this sketching process, it got me a little bit curious. So I dug up some of my old sketchbooks to see what my old pen drawings were like. So I found my old high school sketchbook and I dug up some pieces from grade 11. So I must have been like 17 at this time. And that is about 8 years ago, which is crazy. It does not feel like it's been that long. And I noticed that back then I did a lot of hatching in an area where the hatching builds up, it kind of darkens the value, so it kind of indicates shadow. There's another drawing in my sketchbook. Look at all the hatching on that. It's a little bit messy, but you know, it gets the job done, I think. So that got me thinking. I was like, I haven't really done any hatching in all of these drawings. And that brings us to my two most recent studies. This one is Willem Dafoe, if you guys can tell. I know there's another method called cross hatching where you basically mix up the direction of these lines. Personally, I didn't do it because I don't really love the look of cross hatching. Now, having done these practice pieces, I feel like I've really gotten a much better grasp on this medium now. I actually feel a lot more confident now holding this thing in my hand than I did when I first got it. Now, one thing that I've learned from this experience, one thing that I've absorbed into my tiny pea brain, is that really I would not have been able to draw like this back when I was doing traditional art. These would have definitely not come out the way they did. They probably, in fact, would have looked like poo. So over the past like 5-6 years, I've really doubled down on drawing portraits and digital art. And I feel like the skills that I've acquired through all of that practice 100% translated into this sketchbook right here, into these sketches that you guys are seeing right now. It's very interesting. Just because you're working in a single medium doesn't mean that the skills that you've acquired in that medium can't be translated to other ones. The hardest thing with these transitions between mediums is just learning the medium itself, right? Getting used to that medium. This definitely took some getting used to. This little guy is not forgiving at all. He slaps you in the face and he's like, look at what you've done. Look at this line. It's so ugly. It looks like you. And I'm like, oh my God. So these skills 100% translate from one medium to the other. And just yesterday, I was working on my big Wacom tablet. I bring up that blank canvas, I start laying down a sketch, and I was like, wait a minute. Somehow I feel so much more confident now drawing these lines after having had that experience with the pen. Anyways, yeah, I just wanted to show you guys this process because I've been super excited to do this for the past week. And if you are somebody who only does digital art, let this be your sign to pick up a pen and start drawing on paper. Because these guys cost like what, like 10 bucks for 3? And that's Canadian dollars. Okay, we're not worth as much as our neighbors in the South. You know, it's a lot of fun. It's really tactile. It takes you away from the screen for a bit. You really feel that connection between the pen and the paper. And when you do get into a bit of a flow, it's almost meditative. It brings me a little bit of inner peace, which is something that I'm sorely lacking. I'm not peaceful inside. But yeah, there you guys go. There's my first steps back into traditional art. If you guys want to see more art content, feel free to subscribe to my channel. Check out my Patreon down below for monthly tutorials and process videos. And I'll see you guys on the next video. Now, just before you go, if you've stuck around this long and you happen to be a traditional artist, okay, please go in the comments and let me know, what do you guys draw with? Okay, when you open that sketchbook, what are you putting in there? Do you guys work with markers? Do you guys work with watercolors? And if so, what types do you guys like? Please give me some recommendations, give me some cool things to try out. I would love to keep experiencing this feeling of being a little bit of a noob in a new medium. It's very exciting. So leave the comments, let me know, and thank you. Thanks. Anyways, you can go now. Alright guys, now that all the fake fans are gone, some of you guys might know that I ran my first art table booth thing at OCAD for the Mutual Arts Festival in Toronto. My goodness, it was so much fun. It was amazing. Thank you to everybody who came out. So many of you guys were like, I watched the YouTube videos. I'm sure you guys are going to see this video as well, but it was just 5 hours nonstop of meeting you guys for 2 days. It was the happiest I've been in years. What an amazing experience. I feel like you guys just made my entire 2024. It was so good. It was very tiring, but at the same time, man, you guys are awesome. Despite the fact that sometimes I threaten you with physical violence and emotional damage. For those who didn't get to come out, hopefully I will get to meet all of you guys one day. I would love to meet you guys. Anyways, now I'm rambling. Now I'm going on and on like an old man. God, I'm a boomer.